Good evening everyone and welcome to the launch of the 11th edition of ACS Australia's Digital Pulse, written by Deloitte Access Economics for ACS. My name is Annie Ryan and I'm the Chair of the Canberra Branch Executive Committee of the ACS, and I'm very honoured to welcome our VIPs to the launch today, including the Honourable Richard Marles MP, the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, Minister for Defence and the Federal Minister for Corio. We have many other VIPs joining us today, and we'll introduce you to those shortly. But firstly, I wanted to say a few words about the excellent report that is the Digital Pulse. I look forward to the release of the Digital Pulse every year, partly because I'm a self-confessed data nerd, both being a CPA and a technology professional, so a pretty nerdy mix, but also because it provides us with such valuable analysis of the growth of the digital economy and the workforce. This edition analyses the quality of digital skills across the Australian workforce with particular emphasis on AI and cyber, both of which are really hot topics at the moment, in case you hadn't picked up on that. It explores how Australia's traditional sources of digital talent are under strain and need to be supplemented through alternative pathways. This edition also discusses how we can improve the commercialisation and startup environment in Australia. And because I am a data nerd, I love to pore over the workforce and digital indicators in the statistical compendium, that's a bit of a mouthful, that's in the report. So I was just talking to a few people tonight that often refer to it in research. That's a really good resource. So I hope I've whetted your appetite, because we have a wonderful program of speakers and a panel of experts later that we'll hear from. But to start us off, I would now like to hand over to the Honourable Richard Marles MP, the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, Minister for Defence and the Federal Minister for Corio.
Thank you, Annie. Can I start by acknowledging the Ngunnawal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past and present. Can I acknowledge Josh Griggs, the CEO of ACS, and through him all the members of the ACS executive, and let me also acknowledge Annie Ryan and all the members of the Canberra branch of ACS. It is an enormous honour to be here today to participate in the launching of the 2025 Digital Pulse report. Technology throughout history sometimes happens in a linear way, but often, and perhaps more often, it happens in leaps. The printing press, the burning of coal and the use of steam, which fueled the Industrial Revolution, the telegraph, electricity. In the age in which we are living, that's really characterised by the age of the computer, emanating out of the Second World War, the age of the internet, and what many believe we are witnessing right now is the age of AI. Indeed, the revolution that we are seeing in respect of artificial intelligence is seen by many as being a moment of that level of consequence. When I was at school in the 80s, it was understood then that computer science would be one of the key frontiers of science, equal to engaging in physics or chemistry. With the advent of the internet, we see the burgeoning of an entire sector and industry beyond those with science degrees, and the digital economy is suddenly conceived of as an area of productivity within our national economy. But what's really happening in a remarkably short period of time. At the end of 2023, I was at the AI Summit, which was convened by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak of Great Britain at Bletchley Park. And in less than 2 years, we are seeing AI get to a point now where it is almost everyone who is in the economy has a need to have some form of skill which enables them to use this astonishing tool. All of that is the challenge that we are facing. Often we talk about the most significant microeconomic reform which is needed within our society today in Australia is to climb the technological ladder, to infuse our economy with science and technology. Well, that is completely centred on the industry of which you are a part. Digital skills, the digital economy is how we do that. Or flip it, we will not climb the technological ladder unless we meet the fundamental challenges which happen here in cyber, in AI. And it means that the Digital Pulse report that is being launched tonight is right at the centre of our national economic challenge. I think it's right at the centre of our national productivity challenge. What the report finds is that right now, the digital economy is contributing $134 billion to our national economy, employing 1 million people. But it identifies the existence of a skills deficit in terms of the numbers that we need within that sector, but also the skills that are required by everyone to use technologies such as artificial intelligence. And this is particularly in the case of cybersecurity, which the report finds accounts or costs the economy tens of billions of dollars every year. But to look at this in a more optimistic sense or an opportunistic sense, what it also highlights is that if we can close that skills gap, there is a huge potential uplift in productivity for our economy. $25 billion is estimated as the uplift in the economy over the course of the next 10 years. At the heart of this is skilling our workforce, having more in the sector, but having more skills for everyone throughout our economy. And there are a series of recommendations in the report around how to do that, beginning with a national skills framework. I really want to commend ACS for producing the Digital Pulse report for 2025. It really is a remarkable piece of work, and I want to congratulate Josh on all that he's done over the last 18 months in stewarding ACS, which I think is demonstrated in the Digital Pulse report, which is being presented to you this evening. This is a really fundamentally important piece of work which goes to the heart of our productivity and economic challenge, and it's really my pleasure to be here tonight to be able to launch the Digital Pulse report this year, which is a significant contribution to the challenges of our nation. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much to the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Richard Marles, for doing us the honour of launching the 11th edition of Australia's Digital Pulse tonight. Richard Marles is a great friend of Digital Pulse, a great friend of the ACS. He's a friend of mine. I've known Richard Marles for over 20 years, from when he first joined Parliament, and I found him to be a great policy leader who isn't just interested in the political one-liner, but someone who has, as he outlined tonight, someone who's interested in ideas and change as well. He's someone who's not only a Defence Minister, but he's interested beyond his portfolio as well, in the future of this country, in its economic and social well-being, in all of those different forms, and how innovation, science and technology can help drive that. So we thank the Minister so much for being here this evening. My name is John O'Mahony. I'm a partner in Deloitte Access Economics. This is the 11th Australia's Digital Pulse launch that we've got. I've been here for every one of them. It's been a pleasure to work with the ACS for many years. We do this, which is called the national launch, but then we also do state-based launches of these events in Sydney and Melbourne, Brisbane and Darwin and Hobart, all around the country. So for me, this is close to my 100th time that I've been launching this report. So while for many people, this will be a couple of extra grams that you'll take home this evening if you've been handed a hard copy, for me, what you have in your hands, this is my life. This is what I've dedicated my career to. So it really is a pleasure for me just to have a few moments to take it. One of the hardest things when you're doing the 11th edition of a report is to make it better than the 10 editions that have come before it. To help us get there, Helen and Josh gave us some fantastic guidance at the start. They said, this year we can't just have one more year of Australia's digital pulse. This year you're going to have to go bigger, you're going to have to go broader, you're going to have to go bolder if you're going to make it better than last year's. So on the workforce front, we won't just look at the size of the tech workforce and where it's going, but also reach into new pipelines of talent and how that can underpin our prosperity. Broader, yes, we will look at the workforce, we have to do that. But as the member organisation for technology professionals in this country, we need to also have a say on the broader digital ecosystem. So Josh and Helen's advice to us was, let's cover innovation. We have to have a say on AI. We have to have a say on cyber as well. Even though it's not about workforce, it influences our members' futures. So you'll see that in this edition of Digital Pulse as well. And finally, to be bolder. I think that folks who are familiar with some previous editions of Digital Pulse, might have said of certain editions that there was a certain reticence. There was a certain reticence to include strong policy advocacy inside Digital Pulse for the reason that Annie mentioned earlier, which is it's well known as being a very detailed document. But this year, we are much bolder in what we are asking of government, asking of industry to make policy change. So you'll still see 100 pages of detail. You'll still see 4 technical appendices. You'll see 22 pages of statistical compendium and literally hundreds of references in this tome of information. But you will see those things this year. Unfortunately, this year's edition has been called Today Meet Tomorrow. I really would have preferred it to be called Australia's Digital Pulse, the Bumper Edition. It's also important, just final introductory remark, is that it comes at a very important time. But there are reports that can land at any time in the policy cycle, in the economic cycle, and the industry cycle. There's no better time for an 11th edition of Australia's Digital Pulse. If you think, just last week, President Trump in the US announced his AI strategy, Winning the Race, America's AI Action Plan. Nationally in Australia, we have a refreshed government who's promised a term of delivery, of action. And then in a couple of weeks' time, the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, he has a productivity summit. Well, if he's looking for ideas to lift productivity in this country, we've got 10 in this report, which we're launching this evening. I don't need to convince anybody in this room of the importance of technology for Australia's economy. $134 billion, a million tech workers in this country. If it was just an industry by itself, it'd be as significant as any of Australia's industries. Think of the mining sector, think of the care sector, think of the retail sector, think of construction. Technology is right up there. But it's more, because it's not just that. It's also an industry that helps all of those industries as well. As epitomised by this nice statistic that we've added this year, the average Australian worker, not just in technology but across the board, using digital skills nearly 3 hours every day. That's the accountant who's using software for fraud detection. Or it might be someone who's working in administration, who's using extra software to assist with organising the office. So digital technology, as we all know, is everywhere. This is the national launch of Digital Pulse, but I think Annie and Janelle would kill me if I didn't make a brief reference to the fact that we're not just in the nation's capital, we're in a hotspot of digital activity in Australia, in Canberra. I think it's down on page 60. We've got the ACT specific statistics where you can see that IT students in the ACT, the numbers have tripled in the last 2 decades. And over the next 10 years, we're expecting tech workers in this city to increase by another 50%. So we do have a national launch today. We've got a very important ACT IT economy as well. Of course, all of this extra demand means that we do face a skills challenge. And traditionally, we focus on the headcount of tech workers. This year, we focus on the quality of the skills as well. And some of the findings are quite startling. 77% of technology workers are missing the skills that they need to fulfill their role. We've got the tech workers, do we have the skills? More broadly, 51% of other workers deficient in the skills they need for their role. All told, you've got 150,000 businesses currently experiencing significant, this isn't some, significant or severe digital skills gaps. The answer this year that we focus more on is what's called alternative pathways. And that's just recognising that we are in an environment where migration and international students may not produce the same bounty of tech workers like we've had in the past decade. And alternative pathways are saying, well, hold on. Is there a way for a person with an industry certification or with a VET qualification to be able to join the ranks of the digital workforce? This isn't just something that might be cooked up for a few startups. No less than the CEO of Australia's Digital Transformation Agency, who also helped with the report this year, Chris Fechner, listen to what he says. It's on page 21 of the report. Digital skills are scarce, but not rare. We need to dig up more by promoting alternative learning pathways in entry-level roles where workers can develop job-ready skills. And in the report, we show all the good work that's being done, that if we are able to amplify, we can make a difference. It's what AWS is doing with connecting businesses and students, what Microsoft is doing in the broader ecosystem of workers. Queensland TAFE helping with mid-career transitions. CPA Australia helping the accounting workforce become a digital accounting workforce. CREST focusing on cyber skills. So we really think that alternative pathways will be a major solution to Australia's digital skills challenges. CEOs think they're a good idea. Industry certifications and vet qualifications rank very highly for Australia's business leaders, the CEOs. But then you go downstairs to the HR department and you look at the job ads that are being put out. And most of them, the vast majority of them still say Bachelor of Computer Science, Bachelor of Computer Science, Bachelor of Computer Science, without considering, as Chris Fechner suggested, without considering, is there potentially an alternative pathway by which we can get people into these roles? Another important organisation that's doing that is the Future Skills Organisation. I did see Patrick Kidd here earlier as well. He's got his hand up over here. If you get a chance to talk to Patrick Kidd later on this evening, that's time well spent. Thank you as well to the FSO for contributing to this year's Digital Pulse. If we're able to do this, there's a big economic dividend, and this is the sort of number that the Treasurer will be interested in a couple of weeks' time. We've done some work with the Tech Council of Australia about how greater investment in technology will help our economy. In Digital Pulse, we find that if we can match that with the workers, then the dividend is amplified, and we can help address some challenges like our cybersecurity woes. This year's Digital Pulse also broadens in a few directions. One is innovation policy. Australia is doing a strategic examination of R&D that will be delivered later this year and will hopefully lift our research and development levels from about 1.7% of GDP up to even 2% would be good, 3% would be great. If you watch the ABC, you might have seen a graph on this from Alan Kohler, and that's finance, just a couple of days ago about this. It's not just R&D, it's investment in startups and in scale-ups as well. 11,000 businesses offshore because they can't find home and an opportunity to develop here. Australia does have the capital, but there is a very big matching job to be done, particularly for female-founded business. Listen to this statistic. Australia has 27% of its digital startups founded by women. And you think, well, that's about on par with the digital workforce, about 30%. Think of the funding that goes to startups. 2% of the funding going to startups goes to female-only founded businesses. It's a shocking statistic that absolutely has to change. Exactly. Boo indeed. And finally, is a very important topic of sovereign AI, a huge opportunity for Australia as well. that bar is to scale, showing that Australia's investment in AI is inadequate, Australia's use of AI is low compared with other countries around the region. And what's holding us back? Well, quite a few things, but one thing that strikes me as really interesting is trust in the systems. Trust in the systems is holding us back. And this is why I think sovereign AI, which is Australia having a national capability, infrastructure, models, data, workforce, etc., us having the activity here won't just foster investment, but I think it can also help build trust as well, with significant benefits to flow from that. We're going to hear more from Sue Kay in a moment, but I think she put it very well on page 48 of the report, when she says, we've got all the ingredients. The problem is we're not building the cake. We've got the talent, we've got the technology, we've got the opportunity. We are an obvious place for building sovereign AI infrastructure. There's no reason why we shouldn't be investing. We've got 10 bold reforms that we propose in some detail in the research. The top one, we must have a national sovereign AI capability strategy in this country. There is no choice for this country. We must have it. And and towards the back there as well, important for governments to play a role in that as well. I'll let your eyes cast over some of those recommendations. As I say, there's a workforce component about encouraging people to retrain and into digital roles. There is a role for business in strengthening some of the alternative pathways. But there's also a lot we need to do in innovation and in startup policy as well to make sure that we have a healthy digital economy in this country. It will be good for productivity growth, for our economy, for our society. This is a great document to feed into the Productivity Summit and discussion that's happening in this country. When we're back for the 12th edition next year, we want to see action on all of these 10 items as I hand across to Genevieve Reid, the Chief Growth Officer of the ACS, to chair our panel and discuss some of these issues. A final thank you for a gentleman who's not here this evening, and his name is Ian Dennis. I've been looking after the ACS digital pulse for 11 years, but before that thing at the back called the statistical compendium, Ian used to do that by himself for many years before me. So we stand on his efforts in launching our research this evening. Thanks so much for having broad access to economic back in.
Thank you so much, John. Members, guests, can you please welcome to the stage our panellists who are going to deep dive into the report. Joining me this evening is Dr. Sue Kay, who's Director of UNSW's AI Institute. I think she's bringing cake. Thanks, Sue. Sue's also a founding member of the Kingston AI Group, and I think that's a really important topic of conversation. The work that the Kingston Group are doing, looking at AI infrastructure compared to investment in other jurisdictions. Also joining Sue is Dr. Shubho Banerjee, who's a Deputy Commissioner and Head of the Australian Public Service, with a focus in the academy and capabilities. Dr. Shubho is no stranger to the public sector. He's worked in reform and at the interface of academia and practice for a long time. I have to say he also has a PhD in physics, so if there's any quantum questions, Shubho, you know it's you. And of course, great to have Lucy Poole with us too. Lucy, we're really proud to be a partner and supporter with the Digital Transformation Agency. We've signed an MOU with them recently, and it's been fantastic to work alongside them, particularly as Lucy's setting about implementing the Australian Government's vision for a world-class digitally competitive public service. And last but no means least, our dear friend Jim Freeman. Jim's the Chief Technology Officer from Kyndryl ANZ. Kyndryl, many of us know, are not ASX listed, NSE listed business. They've spun out of IBM and they're operating in over 60 countries, navigating IT secular trends. So great to have the panel with us, and I think we should get started. Thanks. There's a lot in this report about skills, but I'm not going there first, Sue, because you're sitting next to me. And I've got you and I've got Jim. I really wanted to talk a little bit more about AI before we dive into skills. We're all using AI and it's great, and everybody's got it on their phone. But I did read something in the report that you've done about the fact that we are users of AI. We are not researchers and developers of AI, and we're not creating AI businesses. So what can we do to change that? Should we change it? Can we just be users, or can we be a bit more ambitious given the ecosystem that you've talked about?
Well, sorry, so we actually perform really well in Australia in terms of our AI research, which just, I think, encourages the federal government to not invest, because we do very well with what we've got. But I think we're not really taking advantage of it. So most government policies really are very much directed towards how companies can adopt artificial intelligence. And I don't see a lot of thinking put into how we can actually develop our own AI companies. And certainly there's very little support for developing any AI models, because there's a knee-jerk reaction that you're just talking about developing an Australian version of ChatGPT. When that's not the case at all. There's a number of different areas where we could be developing domain-specific AI models, taking advantage of some of our unique national data sets, and making sure that that value stays here in Australia with tax-paying companies. Yes, I think there's been a lot of focus on the adoption of AI, and I think there's an enormous body of work that needs to be done there, but we're really missing an opportunity if we're also not focusing on how we can be creators of AI. And I don't think that we actually have looked hard enough at the economics of the value that you get if you're a country that is creating the AI that you are also adopting. But that seems to be a very hard argument to win at the moment, and I think fundamentally it makes it harder for us to adopt AI if we don't have the people who understand how a lot of these models are built. And if we're not investing in those people, and if we're not investing in developing our own AI models, there is increasingly less reason for that AI talent to stay in Australia.
I think that's a good. But Jim, if I can throw you, why is AI moving so fast? It feels to me like it's a race, it's a sprint all the time. It just moves too fast for us to catch up or be in.
Yeah, well, I think the real answer lies in what is the programming language of AI? It's English, it's Thai, it's Japanese, and everyone here speaks a language. And so I think for the first time, there's no need for a technologist to deploy this technology. So that just makes it so easy to use. That interface is so low now. And that's coupled with, I mean, it's an amazing compute engine. I mean, the synthesis that it can do and the answers that it can come up with, I think that's why this technology, unlike all of the others that have moved very fast. I mean, how long could it take us for all to have mobile phones right now? The internet was extremely fast. This is just going faster, wider, and deeper than anything we've seen, because they've finally broken that paradigm of having to have a specialized skill to use it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the great moment I think where we lead into, which is then, do we all have jobs? And I think Shubha, we touched on this yesterday. So AI is coming in. What does that mean for me? This report spells out there's a skill gap, there's a productivity demand. So aren't we contradicting ourselves when we're saying there's great jobs in tech, please come and join us, those of you who haven't. There's a demand, and yet also there's this sense of AI is going to eat my job anyway, where do I fit in? This falls right into your wheelhouse, the APSC. How do you figure out the capability, the demand, and where does an individual fit in?
Yeah, thanks, Genevieve. I think there are some really important broader conversations to be had about adoption, and it's really crucial as part of that for that to be as broad-ranging and inclusive a conversation as it can be. As Jim has said, it's ubiquitous, and there's something really unsettling about just how ubiquitous it is. And you see kind of particular, I don't know, snarky remarks about this kind of ubiquitous thing. One of the things that's on our mind is use in recruitment. People kind of talk about it in quite a snarky kind of way about AI-generated pictures or AI-generated CVs or these sorts of things, without, I think, really thinking about it in the way maybe that you're going to, Genevieve, which is to think about augmentation, to think about connection, to think about trying to make our work better, is actually a really natural use of these sorts of capabilities. And yet we kind of struggle to have this conversation because it's moving so quickly that people are quite unsettled by the kind of pace or the frontier of the change. So one of the things that we're thinking about a lot is how to give people the space, how to give them the tools to really interact with AI in a much more natural way in the flow of their work, so that we can have this sort of conversation in a more kind of in a more informed, engaged kind of manner. I think the empirics thus far are that there's no doubt that there will be workforce change, but a lot of that workforce change thus far has been about being able to use it to change the mix of tasks and to use it to change the types of interactions that the person is having versus what might be automated or what might be done through a tool. So I think there's a lot of potential for it to really improve our work in different ways, to speed things up, and then through that change the kind of mix of what we're expecting in our world in public service jobs.
Lucy, Digital Transformation Agency, it's a big title, it's a bold ambition. We get a little bit granular about what you're actually doing. What are you up to?
Yeah, so hi everyone, it's great to be here tonight. You've given me a lot of room to go anywhere I want with that question, thank you. So look, I think over the past couple of years, the DTA has been collaborating across the whole of the service to really build up the foundations from which we are now ready to launch off. And those foundations are really about the guardrails, the governance, the policies, all of which are designed to ultimately give public servants a stronger sense of the risk appetite and to be able to operate confidently and safely within boundaries that have been set. That's not to say though that there hasn't been a lot of experimentation. In fact, I think part of the struggle has been speaking openly about the proofs of concepts and the work that has been quietly happening in the background. Of course, AI within the public service has been a long-standing use of a form of technology for us. We've been using it for decades. But with Gen AI, there seems to be a notion that you're cheating if you're using it somehow. You only have to look at the education sector to see the challenge that some of the institutions are going through around what they will allow versus not. So I think there's been a lot going on. The DTA has been working very strongly with the Public Service Commission, with finance, with our colleagues in DISA, to really take the stance that we can't expect people to be able to just pick up and use a technology, nor is this a case of just plug and play, right? Like if we're honest about the productivity challenge in front of us, actually there's a lot of hard work we need to do to unpack the technology and to build it into our workflows. And that's not going to be just up to the technologist, it's going to be for our business areas, it's going to be for our change consultants, it's going to be a role for everyone to play.
Speaking of change, I mean, we talk a lot about, and the report covers a bit about pathways into tech, but I think one of the areas that interests me most too is the skills gap exists everywhere. And as we discussed earlier, it exists at very senior levels on boards. Tech, AI particularly, cyber knowledge doesn't exist at those most senior levels. And I'm interested to get a take, perhaps from you, Shugo, in the first instance, and then to Jim, about there's a skill gap for older, wiser heads and leaders. How do we address that for them and with them so that they can not just have the knowledge, but lead us through to the ecosystem that Sue's talking about, which is one of vibrant, innovative R&D companies. If you don't understand it, how can you lead in it? How can you invest in it if you don't know the questions to ask a CIO on board?
Yeah, thanks, Genevieve. You're right to say this is very much on our mind. I think there's actually no doubt that senior leaders generationally, let's use age as a proxy, are not as engaged, not as adept, not as natural in the space, and it partly goes with what we talked about before, that the frontier is moving so quickly. So as a leadership challenge from our side, I guess we would say it really absolutely puts the spotlight on things that we preach but actually need to now practice around adaptive leadership, around growth mindset, and around a bit of humility, around actually kind of understanding what you know and what you don't know, and being prepared to learn from a range of different places, and to learn not just from kind of credentials or kind of supposed older, wiser heads, but to really look around you and see how the world is changing, and to be open to that. And I think it's a bit of a tell, I've got to say, that you can see leaders that have a real appetite for that, who actually are genuinely curious, and then you see leaders who are, in a sense, trying to assert some form of authority, knowledge, age, and it's just coming a cropper, right? Because it's so far off the pace that it's risible. And so this kind of idea that if you're not prepared to actually grapple with the idea of how quickly that frontier is moving and what is required of you to really have a sense of that, you've got no hope in this space, and you get found out very quickly, I think. And so we're playing with some ideas around trying to think about connecting. Again, I'm using age as a proxy. It's not a perfect proxy, but connecting some of our grads or other newer entrants. Also, the report talks about alternate pathways, event pathways, industry pathways. I'm very supportive of that as well. But some of our newer entrants with some of the older, more established people in leadership teams, really trying to get a more natural use of how you would think about it and how you go about this sort of thing. And as I say, I think it's a really vivid tell of whether or not leaders are genuinely up for a growth mindset or whether they're just spouting it.
Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, well, I think the concept of reverse mentoring is really important and has the added benefit that for, some of the young up-and-coming staff who wouldn't necessarily get face time with a lot of the leadership team, it can then actually reduce those barriers. And I heard an interesting thing yesterday where, a company that, looks at how AI tools are being used across their organisation can actually tell which leaders are leaning in and actually leading by example and encouraging their staff to use AI just by the numbers of who's engaging, and there's significant differences. So I think, as you said, people will get caught out if they don't actually...
The metric that might never appear in any report. Jim?
I was going to say, so in my business, Kindle, we've been doing infrastructure for a long time, and that means security and data, sovereignty, all of those pieces. And in fact, about, 18 months ago, when Microsoft took the position in OpenAI, they started to roll it out with some of our clients, and we quickly said, no, stop, because we have frontline experience dealing with this. And so the two companies took another 6 weeks to really lay out safe AI guidelines. What does it mean to have an ethical test against this? And what is the role that leadership has to play? And fortunately, and I do appreciate all of this, there are growth mindsets and all that, but leaders already have a responsibility around cyber, they already have a responsibility around data, and if they haven't figured that out, shame on them, they don't belong there. This is another chapter in the responsibility of the modern age. So absolutely, there are tools, and if they really aren't paying attention, it's not that hard to figure out. It's another discipline that they have to adopt. And that's around the safeness. Now, absorption and driving use, that's a very different thing. But in terms of creating safe space for the organization, there are techniques technologies, and at some point we'll talk about a sovereign AI platform, because those are the kinds of things that you can put in place to provide the safety net that leaders and employees, citizens need.
Well, let's talk about that anyway. Let's walk through very quickly before we get into some of the details about the skills, about the notion of Australia having a safe and secure AI platform. Why is this so important, do you think, for us in terms of sovereign capability?
Well, having sovereign is not new, right? I mean, just talk to the Defense Department, just talk to the government. They already understand the need to protect, right? And this, just like cyber, this has bad actors in the world, so it becomes imperative that Australia take a strong position on that. Kimbrel happened to have a very large data sovereignty issue because we do a lot of telemetry for a lot of servers around the world. And we run into this problem all the time. You know, the Netherlands does not want the data to go to Switzerland. Okay, so we had to do a lot of work to get a sovereign data plane. And that led us to a broader conversation about the sovereign AI framework, which ends up with 7 elements. One is all of the infrastructure and all of the equipment residing in country. The second thing is confidentiality. The equipment that it runs on has to be certified. So you may know, obviously this group would know, there are ways you can make sure that that chip is genuine, if the software you're running is certified. So that has to be number 2. Data sovereignty, you know, encrypted at rest and in motion, and now increasingly in memory. So typically we weren't so worried about clear text in memory, now we have to be. Because if there's a computer bug and it dumps out a lot of confidential data, that's a violation. So there are several other pieces.
You're freaking me out a bit here.
No. We solved the problem. You just have eyes wide open. It's not, and this, by the way, these 7 components were built on the back of that sovereign data plane with federal governments to say, we need to understand how to do sovereign AI platforms. So it's not rocket science, it's super heightened awareness around those 7 dimensions.
Sounds like there's a lot for us to do in this space. If I can just come back to the role of the individual. A lot of this is about we have the jobs, we've got a demand for productivity. We talk a lot about being tech adjacent in our report, and you're very near to it. Lucy, really keen to understand, you know, I'm in a role, maybe in the public service, maybe anywhere. I hear a lot about these tech jobs. I feel a bit fearful that my job might go away. How can I take that leap into tech? What are you doing to enable me to go from what might be my accounts payable job? How can I get into this world? And it seems cool and it seems very well paid, but it also seems quite mythical to me. And I've been doing my job pretty much the same way. It's fast and people talk about AI and cyber. How do I go from my hypothetical accounts payable job into your new world of cyber with the demands that you need for thousands of new workers?
So, excellent point there around the mid-tier parts of our workforce. I think often we get a little sidetracked by the new shiny grads that are coming in, and absolutely they have a role to play. But as I was recently at an event where I spoke with a couple of hundred young females, roughly 15 years of age, who were interested in careers in STEM, and not once did they ask me about AI, not once did they ask me, you know, what tools I was using, or because for that generation it's just like, duh, it's there and it's what you use. And so I think we need to first of all get a bit more savvy about the generational shift that we are going to be encountering over the next couple of years. And I think not get too distracted by this notion of my job is going to be displaced, and instead focus on our current workforce in the first instance, and making sure that they have access to the tools, yes, but much more importantly, the context within which they can then use it, So making this stuff real, it's not too dissimilar to previous waves of change that have come through. You know, how long did we talk about the use of data and becoming much more savvy with data? It's exactly the same thing, in that we can't expect people are just going to be able to get it, even though it's available everywhere. And when it comes to deployment in the workplace, we need to do the hard work with the people. The second thing is, I think we've got to be careful not to assume that to become familiar with the technology and to use it, you have to become a tech person. In fact, the conversations we're having much more so these days is around the leadership components, about this kind of blurring of the boundaries, our traditional boundaries, about what it is that makes me be able to do my job better, and certainly the notion of a job description. Whilst I have a lot of empathy for the argument that we need to be recruiting the right people, I think we can get a little bit sidetracked by what's in the job description as opposed to actually what are the skills that we need. And so we've got a whole range of tools and training that's available through our APS Academy that's run by the Public Service Commission, and there will be more to come. But I think it's not a simple case of you've got to join and be a cyber expert. Actually, I think that the trick for us is going to be about working with individuals to make them part of the journey of changing the job that they do, which is not going to be about job displacement at all. Although I have been having lots of conversations about people saying, remember the calculator? Remember the Mao person that used to come? So this is just this is part of life, actually.
Can I just add to that, Genevieve? So the point of, and this is slightly an Australian Public Service point, I guess, but I think generalisable, going back to a skills framework, the reason we're banging on about skills frameworks is to really get a decomposition into what the constituent elements are that you need to be able to do these jobs, and to have a sense that many of the jobs that you were talking about, Genevieve, often have a good platform or foundation in many of those skill components, and then you can identify what else you might need to do, and to be much more targeted about that, and to think about how you can find your path. My colleague, Grant, fellow physicist from the APSC, has helped develop a tool called Career Pathfinder for the Australian Public Service, which does exactly this piece of thinking about, well, how do we map where you are now? What are the kinds of roles that you might aspire to? And how can you think about a pathway, including capability development, training, or other things? It's a much more flexible way of thinking about this kind of challenge, rather than, as Lucy said, being too obsessed about a job description or another job description. It's a much more tractable way into that. And again, as a APS point, because we are dealing with considerable scale, there are a lot of very talented people who have a lot of those constituent elements in the skills, who would be absolutely brilliant and are turning out to be brilliant in converting or changing during a career path. One of the great kind of opportunities of being in the public service is that you can do many different roles over a career, find them very fulfilling, and for us, we really need to be thinking about, well, how do we set up in a way that maximises that degree of flexibility and support for people's journey? And so Career Pathfinder is a fantastic tool to help that.
I hear there are other great tools in the market too. Hi, Sophia. Interesting, but also the cost of this too. So we're talking about upskilling, reskilling. There's a significant investment being made, I'm imagining, in public service. Are other organisations that you're seeing out there, other public companies, Jim, they're having to spend a lot of money to get this moving, to get the career changer?
No, I don't think it's so much that they're inventing new methodologies. We've always talked about a set of transferable skills and job-specific skills. So that framework has been around. And in more enlightened companies, that's absolutely the way that you get the career growth. And if the company is large enough, I end up with 7 jobs over the life of my career. So, but what is needed, of course, is what is that new set of skills? And for that set of skills in an AI world, how many of them are transferable? And many of them are. Critical thinking, communication, although written communication, not so much, but if I need to tell you what I'm doing, I still need to have some way to create a coherent sentence and share. But there are a lot of skills that are readily transferable. And in fact, the domain-specific skills are really what you need to bring to the AI environment. You, as a professional, you know that discipline, you know your agency, you know the policy, you know the intent the minister has. And now you've got a tool to make that real and make it faster.
It's just interesting though, Sue, because we're used to waiting 3 years for a graduate. Right? We love the graduate and the comp sci graduates are in this room, but it strikes me, and it's in the report, we have to find faster pathways in. So how can we talked before about this, you've got to be ethical, you've got to apply your thinking skills. Can we do this more quickly than a 3-year undergraduate degree or a 2-year master program?
I think we definitely can, but I mean, we have some real structural barriers in Australia, separating, TAFE from universities, which other countries, have managed to sort out, and it's still an issue for us. At the very least, I think a lot of university graduates would benefit from training alongside the people who are doing TAFE training, just so they have a better understanding of the backgrounds that each other bring and the different value of those skill sets. I think there's huge opportunity in those areas, but I guess we have to look at what incentives we're putting in place. So this might not be a great example, but in the robotics area, we're never going to have enough electricians, right? And yet we get a lot of apprentices who start in a trade. We incentivise companies to take them on as apprentices, but then those incentives drop off, and so then the companies let the apprentices go. And so I don't know, we just seem to have a lot of perverse incentives that actually seem to be barriers, because I think our TAFEs are able and willing to be providing those courses, but for some reason we just don't seem to put things together in the right way to make it work.
There's a recommendation in the report too about learning and earning. You can do both. Jim, just to wrap up, and I need to go out on a high. There was a bit of talk today, the redundancies in CBA, we talked about chatbots, and then you were mentioning to me the other day that there are all sorts of other jobs that are coming. Can you just run through that list of those other jobs? Because I think I need to know what the future looks like.
Well, I would just ask anybody who works in an agency, how big is your backlog? Just look at the numbers. What is it, 1 billion? That's 10 to the 9th tech workers, and we need another 230,000. The productivity is just going to let us get a lot more done, and there will be new problems that come up. I mean, generative AI, large language models use a lot of power. We need people to figure out that problem. They need specialized chips. We need to figure out that problem. There are a lot of secondary things that we'll need people to go figure out in addition to the work we have today. And you said, who uses a calculator? And your comment the other day is, we just absorb this change and don't really notice it. It's just that this has gone so fast, so wide, so ubiquitous that we're starting to, wow, there's a disturbance. It wasn't a disturbance for iPhone, that was really cool. It was really, really cool. This is really cool to embrace it. Embrace it.
Embrace it, indeed we will. Sue, Shubo, Lucy and Jim, thank you very, very much for your time this evening. It's been a phenomenal discussion. I'm looking forward to having more of it with the four of you again. Members and guests, can we please thank our panel very much? And I'm just now going to welcome our CEO, Josh Griggs, and our President, the wonderful Helen McHugh, to the table to say thank you and closing remarks.
We got to get a stage direction.
Yes.
Delay go? Go. Okay, hi everybody. I'm Helen McHugh, the President elected of ACS, and I'm very proud to represent this organisation. We've been told we have to be quick, using that. So I love this industry, but very quickly, for me, tonight, it's about, I said we need to be networking and sharing, and I have so many people I've asked, and we're already connecting, and I think it's really important that we network and we make sure that we work out how to work together and help figure out what this industry is about. All right, basically make a call out. So I really push that we make sure we've got multiple generations here. So we have 2 bunches of students. Sorry guys, I have to embarrass you, I'm very good at this. So we have a group of cohort from ANU, which what's her name? Genevieve organised, and I have a group from Canberra Uni, my alumni. And welcome guys. So it's important for you as you watch what we're doing, and thank you for the coordinators that brought you guys together, to understand that you are the next generation, but and so networking within this environment is really important, but it's also now addressing the issues and about making sure we've got enough skills and filling the pathways and alternate pathways. So ACS, we're very much working on that with a number of the gorgeous people in this room to help us make that happen. And Josh will talk more strategically about what that looks like.
I'm not sure that I'll talk more strategically, but I did want to just thank everyone for coming. It's really important that the ecosystem comes together. I think value is created at the edges. It's really important that we've got students, we've got the fellows, we've got industry, we've got universities, we've got government, we've got everyone represented here today. I think what I've got out of today is if you haven't worked out how to automate some tasks with AI, then you haven't done enough. If you have parked whole job roles and given it to AI, then you've gone too far. And if you don't know how to work it out, then have a chat to the students, because they'll give you some direction. So I'm really pleased that it was great to hear from Richard, and obviously I think it's the first government in 9 years that I've seen that has recognised the tech sector, recognised the importance of having pathways into tech, not just the highly esteemed university pathways, but also the alternative pathways. Recognise that whilst we represent 3.5% of research globally, we do not represent that in commercialisation. So, our startup and scale-ups are represented here today. Very important that we support them to drive for it. And if we don't make some fundamental changes, it's not your job you're going to lose. So you won't. Typically, if you're losing your job to AI, then they've gone too far. But you will lose your job to someone that is using AI. And if we don't do anything about it as a country, we will lose our economic position. So it is that requirement that digital skill, it's not like tech, I choose computer science, I'm going to be a tech career person. It is every role needs digital skills. And so, together, I think we can drive that. We're working closely with the FSO, working closely with the DTA, with the CPAs, with every other body to try and drive that throughout the economy. So, we're really excited about it. Thank you all for being here. I think we're on for another hour or so before we kicked out. Don't be terrified about AI, and also don't put all your stuff into ChatGPT, because it will show up 48 hours later, whether you're paying for it or not. So just give it a crack, but be careful.